So if you remember our original example, when we started this series on elasticity, we had a web developer and we wanted to know if they increase price from 200 per website to 250 per website, will revenue increase? And just to be clear, revenue is price times quantity. And so to answer this question, first we need to recognize that a price increase has two effects. So first, a higher price means more revenue per unit. So when price rises to 250, each website generates $250 versus 200 before. The second effect, though, means that you're going to sell fewer units because of the law of demand. So the first effect increases revenue, but the second effect decreases revenue. So what we want to know is which effect is bigger. The answer to that is it depends on the elasticity. So real quickly, recall our price elasticity of demand is the percentage change in Q over percentage change in P. And let's go ahead and write this down. Revenue is price times quantity. And first, let's just say demand is elastic, which means our price elasticity of demand is greater than 1. So remember, we talked about how if the price elasticity of demand is greater than 1, then that means the numerator of our formula up here has to be greater than the denominator. So this implies the percentage change in quantity is greater than the percentage change in price. So if we have a price increase, we know we're going to have fewer units sold, but we know higher revenue per unit will also accompany that. And since the price elasticity is 1 and the percentage change in quantity is going to be larger, that means the fewer units sold effect is going to be the larger effect. So higher per unit revenue is represented by the price increase. So we have a price that increases a little bit, but the change in quantity is larger than the change in price, which means revenue decreases on net. So in one of the earlier videos, we had our website example, and our price went from 200 to 250. And then we decided that the quantity went from 12 to 8. And the resulting price elasticity of demand in that case was 1.8. So we know from the last slide we just filled out that since price elasticity is greater than 1, the percentage change in quantity is going to be larger than the percentage change in price, which means total revenue decreases. So remember, if we have a elastic demand curve, that means our demand curve is going to be fairly shallow. So it might look something like this. So at a price of 200, we're selling 12 units. So if you remember, our formula for revenue is price times quantity, which in this case is 200 times 12. Well, that happens to also be the length of the two sides of this rectangle I just plotted out, right? So we have 200 here and 12 here. And so the revenue is actually represented graphically by the area of this rectangle here. And we can also show on the graph the total revenue when the price increases. So at 250, we sell 8 units. And so this area here is now total revenue. And so we can see graphically that total revenue decreases because we can just look at the two areas that don't intersect. So this first one here, this is the lost revenue when the price increases, and we gain this box over here. And you can see just by looking at it that this second box is not as big as the the one representing lost revenue. So I won't go through all the logic again, but just like if demand is elastic and implies net revenue decreases from a price increase, if demand is inelastic, that implies that a price increase causes a net increase in revenue. So let's revisit our example again. This time, the price still goes from 200 to 250, but let's say the change in quantity is less. So before it was 8, now let's say it's 10. And this implies an elasticity of demand of 0.82. So we have inelastic demand. And let's look at this graphically. So at 200, price of 200, we're still selling 12 units. And again, our total revenue is represented by this box here. And at 250, now we sell 10 units. And total revenue in this case is all of this. And to be clear, this is total revenue at a price of 200. And this is total revenue at the original price of 250. And again, let's look at our change in revenue graphically. So when the price changes from 250 to 200, we lose out on this area, but we gain all of this area. So it's not completely obvious as last time, but you can see these are roughly the same length, but the thickness of these rectangles, the red one is slightly thicker than the blue one, which means the red one's going to have a slightly larger area. So that's the intuition behind why revenue increases or decreases and why it's dependent on the elasticity of demand.